All right. Thank you, Alexei. There is another announcement I wanted to bring up on Russia. They're peddling that there might be another offensive near Ugledar, and some foreign sources, maybe Russia, is injecting some stuff in the media sphere. So I wanted to address that. There was an unsuccessful attack. There was up to 160 Russian tanks. Mark, not tanks, armored equipment, tanks and vehicles. Okay. Agree. So what are they doing there? Are they trying to preclude the counteroffensive prepared by Ukraine, or no? Their task number one is to push our troops away from Volnovakha, because this is railroad junction number one that that carries out logistics for the whole south, from Kherson to Mariupol, and it's barely 36 kilometers, something like 30 miles from Vuhledar to them, and we can reach them directly. Basically, yesterday we had a good hit there, right at the rail station, and that worries them because their supply chain is being interrupted. Always different things hit their trains, and very often successfully, and they don't like that. They lose trains, they lose equipment, they lose gasoline, diesel, and other things. And if we get closer, that will be a different story. To make Melitopol or any other town surrender, all we need to do is literally just cut the rail line, get Volnovakha or any other place. And in some parts, it's maybe 20-30 kilometers from the front. So it's very, very close. That concerns them a lot. But it's very difficult to fight in the south. The terrain is difficult. So all their happy gatherings usually end up with something flying on their heads, or like their offensive turning into 160 units of tanks and armored vehicles destroyed. That's a pretty impressive achievement that they unlocked. And if they're going to waste another 100, sure, we'll see. All right. Thank you, Alexei. We skipped a couple of days. In that time, they called that there was a missile strike, which they called a retribution strike. That's what Moscow called it. For Bryansk operation, they hit Kiev and some other cities of Ukraine. Considering that they used calibers and a variety of missiles, what's the story here with Patriot? The ones that can shoot down some of their type of ballistic missiles. We'll see. As our sources say that 2 batteries are not yet installed fully, so we'll see where they will be. But yeah, it was a combined strike. They used some daggers, kinzhals, the supersonic kind of missile, which are not shot downable yet, and some of the ballistic trajectory missiles. But we still managed to hit down about 76-74% of what was launched at our territory. This was not, as we see it, this was not a retribution strike. It was just their planned hit on our energy objects, energy transportation lines. And I think it was a planned attack. They just waited for the United Nations representative to leave, and they're still achieving the same goals, or trying to achieve the same goals. The energy distribution structures are definitely in their mind, and that's what they're trying to hit. We have enough energy producing facilities in the country, but distribution, that's what's in their crosshairs. Also, they recently damaged Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, and it's again transferred itself to diesel to maintain its work. So that's kind of bad practice to start playing these games around nuclear stations. But my reaction to all these combined attacks, they're attempts to break through our interception models and structures. They even used S-300s today, and they actually succeeded in killing 6 people in Donetsk, in Lvov region, and a couple in the other parts of the country. In general, this is very, what's the word in Russian? Pointless story. First, their goal setting is off. The measures and ways selected to do that are horrible, and the results are puny. So, in all the history of warfare, this is one of the most expensive and dumbest operations. Well, it's kind of good, I guess, that they're idiots. If they were smarter, it would have been much harder for us. All right, let's see. Let's take a look at Iran. There is some news blips around it. Agency IRNA is telling that Iran signed a document for purchase of 35 Su-35s from Russia. And that's interesting. Where will they get these planes? Because Russia is in need of Su-35s as well, so we don't know when these will be produced or supplied. And American Ministry of Defense, Lloyd Austin, not only him, there was a combined military delegation. They visited Israel, and they were interesting, sharp statements made about the perspectives of Iran being hit by Israel and United States supporting that. They basically said that what I was following, Mark, the statement that was made that Israel is out of other angles of providing pressure on Iran, and America doesn't really have many control mechanisms to do that. So they still have an option to hit Iranian targets on the table, and Israelis are saying that they are watching the situation, and the moment it reaches the threshold, the unacceptable threshold, because Iran continues to enrich the uranium, and there are questions asked if anybody is helping them to do that, anybody from the north. And they're saying that if Iran will get closer to actual developing the nuclear weapon, there will be military actions, and they will quell this fire down if something happens there. It would have been much worse if Israel and states would try to negotiate with Iran at this point. They would babble something about that. But no, they're a very strong and sharp position. And of course, in some capacity, it will affect the pace of Iranian supplies to Russia, because one of their excuses will be, hey, we're sorry, we are on the verge of war with our foes too, and basically any attack on Iran is helping Ukraine. And of course, Israel and whoever else will be hitting Iran, states, maybe anybody else, they will be targeting manufacturing and distribution facility logistics for military supplies, and these are the same ones used for supplying Russian troops and fulfilling Russian orders. So that'll be very painful for Iran, for Russia, and that'll be favorable for us. So that structure, I do like what's happening there. Well, you've heard that situation is developing about Beijing and supposed visit of Xi. He is officially affirmed on his position on all three of them, right? Yeah, there are three. So one is elected in a Congress and two others appointed in a different fashion. That's the usual communist circus. So that chain of events is unfolding, but there were some statements made from Beijing, from unnamed sources, that if the United States can supply arms to Taiwan, then why Beijing cannot supply weapons to Moscow? So they are acting as provocateurs. They are pointing at Taiwan, saying that that's important, and that's definitely in their sphere of interest. So the news was not exactly anonymous. They were linking some groups and unnamed sources in China, but generally we understand this is a political push. Mark, this is rhetoric, because one thing is attacking the island and trying to draw paratroopers and capture it. The other is, we understand, if they will try to fight to carry out a naval warfare with the United States and allies. And it'll be a nightmare for China, so they understand that, and I don't think they want this war, and they don't want sanctions as well. So one should pose a question here: why would China want it? There is no reason for China to suffer for Russia. If Putin's Russia had a chance to win, then maybe they could have supplied it to maybe sit down at the table of victors. But they haven't done that even when there were some chances. Now Russia has lost that fight. And after they made a statement that they're for peace and they support territorial integrity, but there is some contradiction here. So they do support territorial integrity of Ukraine, but then they are threatening that they might supply some weapons to break that integrity, right? So the logic doesn't quite work there. And unlike Putin, Chinese are a little more logical. They can threaten things, but you cannot really supply factually the country that is attacking territorial integrity of other countries. Because otherwise, territorial integrity of China with the same Taiwan becomes a question too. If Crimea can be annexed, then Taiwan can be annexed too from China. So I don't believe that China will supply any arms. There'll be rhetoric, there'll be threats, they'll be playing their card. And an interesting angle here is that sanctions continue to be implemented. And Blinken spent an hour and a half in the airport when he was visiting Central Asia. He spent some time in Turkey. And he did talk about sanctions and some gray schemes that were existing in Turkey. And then all of a sudden, there were some Turkeys experiencing some IT issues with systems that were used for these gray schemas to supply Russia with sanctioned goods. So, you know, something happened. And also Europe turns to other countries saying that please do not sell computer technologies and other dual designated goods that can be used for military supplies to Russia. And whom are they addressing? Of course, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And at the same time, America is turning to Africa and appealing to them, saying that their interests are much more aligned with Europe and the United States than with cannibalistic regime of Mr. Putin. And we understand that Putin is definitely trying to get some supporters in Africa to make sure that there are some votes in his favor from African continent, so drastic resolutions cannot be adopted in the United Nations. So the United States is addressing that and saying that, guys, do not go this way, you don't need that. You'll have much more beneficial future if you work with us instead of them. Because, you know, sanctions and other things. Of course, does China need that? No, they don't as well. And by the way, even Orban from Hungary came out and said that Hungary needs to think and reconsider their relations with Russia. They need to prepare that these relations may become very difficult and may not be repaired for a while. And this was one of 3 countries in Europe that had a special position to Russia, towards Russia. It was Hungary, Serbia, and Austria. Austria came to its senses real fast, especially when they started looking for corrupt elites that were real good friends with Putin. Serbia came back to its senses rather rapidly. Yesterday, I saw an interview with the Serbian president who was saying, we're not supplying arms to Russia. No, that's not us. If somebody bought from us and then sold to Russia, maybe, but we cannot control that. And now Orban is also folding. So we can see that European Union and NATO members found a way to negotiate with the most stubborn in their midst, the ones who wanted to maintain special relations with Putin's regime. And with that, there are also a few warnings to the countries carrying out gray schemas and safe harboring Russian money and Putin's resources. Borrell came out and said that European Union is technically at the bottom of all the sanctions they can officially apply on Russia, but now they will concentrate on cutting down and shutting down the gray routes of supply to Russia. And we understand they do exist, and a lot of goods are being supplied through these channels. So now they will be addressed. I am privy to some of these channels. I have testified on a few occasions, and I understand that there's a lot of things being supplied, I know, but if we manage to shut that lid down, that'll be painful for Putin and his regime. And it's different companies there. It's European, it's Americans, and some other third countries, third parties. But it's achievable. It's just a complex process. Usually, intermediary country buys these goods for Russia and then sells it, resells it to Russia. And that's what Europe and the United States are concentrating on, to make sure that these channels are not growing, that they block the existing ones, and they make it very painful for the others who might still be evading to continue their activity. And they'll start having issues with microchips and more strategic elements in Russia. So I don't think they will even be able to dream about building those missiles that they're still hitting Ukraine with in a few months. And one also needs to understand, so Russia recently, it came to news, Russia recently asked for several 100,000 food rations from China. Right, they don't have anything to eat, exactly. So, yeah, that just tells you where they are economically. China also was buying a lot of other military equipment from Russia before, so they might even consider selling some of it to Russia, but again, with current restrictions, they probably won't. And recently there was another interesting piece of news. Indian news agency published that they might return some of the tanks, some of the T-90 tanks they purchased, and they can bring some of those to Ukraine. And Russian stats came out, and they said that the number of people living below the poverty level is at about 11%. This is the country that made super profits on energy sources, and it's always amazes me. Every 10th Russian generally is beyond the poverty line. In the country that is rich, enormously rich, and was making super profits for tens of years, where are you going? Why do you need Zaporozhye? Why do you need Donetsk? Why are you destroying Mariupol and trying to rebuild it when every 10th in your country is beyond the poverty? And Alexei, do you think they'll actually rebuild anything? No, of course, they'll just launder some money. They'll build a couple houses at the price of Moscow Tunnel, Moscow Beijing, with lights, and then they'll say that they rebuilt something. Yeah, we understand. And one also needs to understand that there was some manipulation with the income level. So to manipulate and say that it's 1/10, in reality, it's more than that. It's probably 1/8 or something like that. And with that naked butt, trying to attack and capture neighbors and rebuild something and put yourself as some political leadership, this is an idiotic story from any common sense standpoint. 50% of their villages have no access to gas, natural gas, and they're yet somehow a superpower, energy superpower in the world. Ridiculous, right? In the meantime, Norway said that $7.5 billion they'll give to Ukraine for military programs, and they will continue supporting NASAMS with ammo and technical support, which are super effective, same as RST. 10 launches, 10 shots, 10 hits. So very effective things, and thank you, Norway, for helping. That's the story. Somebody is being supported, somebody is not. And sooner or later, these graphs will meet. 200,000 are watching us, about 100,000 click the like button, which is pretty good for Saturday. Again, we ask you to click the like button, to continue sharing it on your social media and subscribing to Fagin Live. I will leave the frame if you don't. Oh, you're trying, yeah, right. Oh, yeah, no. Turn the 25th frame. We need that. Subliminal messaging, subscribe, click like buttons. All right. Danilov, Secretary of national security. It was discussed actively, and his statement that he mentioned a bit nervously that half of people in Ukraine agree to some peace talks. Is that true? What's your position on this? Can it be that some people are tired with war and they are moving slowly to that? Mark, we have a ton of people who want peace talks, practically everybody, but only on one condition: when there is not a single Russian soldier on our territory. Then everybody is for peace talks. So after that condition, yeah, sure. I think the hint here is, as Russian propaganda says, everybody is afraid of mobilization, everybody is tired of war in Ukraine. Let's say, okay, imagine. We understand that each mood is being formed by some events or some forces behind these events, right? It doesn't appear by itself. How many months there were no grand news from the front, good news? Several months, right? Since November, last good successful counteroffensive. Right. We can understand that there is probably a group of people in this country who are pretty removed from military things, and they may be very professional in what they do, but they're not fluent in these military questions. And they may consider that something is pretty grim or there is no perspective. But the moment good news coming from the front start coming into the media, of course, the mood will change. And now add spring, biological factor, more sun, longer day, spring mood. I think we'll be all right, even if somebody is getting a bit upset. And what is it, upset? Recent questionnaire said 89% of Ukrainians ardently support the idea that we will continue fighting even harder, even if Russia uses nuclear weapons. Okay, imagine you take 4% down. That'll be 85% instead of 89%. Is the serious factor? No. So the main key to that is success on the front. Second is internal economic situation. We understand that with the war happening, it's a bit more difficult, but again, the day is getting longer, energy generation is getting better again, and distribution is being fixed. And people are getting more ways to earn money now. We're in the spring season where we plant and sow a lot of grains and other things that make our GDP. So I think we'll hold the mark. And another question is, peace talks, what is it about? What's the topic of peace talks? He did not clarify that. Exactly. That needs to be researched better, because we don't understand what exactly do they mean under that statement. Perhaps people do mean that the whole country should be liberated militarily and then maybe sit down and discuss Crimea. You know, there are tons of different ways. So that phrase, the number of people supporting peace talks is growing, it's a very nebulous statement. It's hard to put in brackets. Personally, from my experience, I'm not meeting anyone who is for peace talks. Again, I understand this is my, it's a limited selection, but it's still a selection. I haven't seen one. So everything will depend upon that spring, how it will unfold, how will our counteroffensive go. Any success on the front will be converted immediately into growing support. And frankly, I doubt that that support dropped as much as somebody said. It doesn't really get to 65% roughly. That is an important number. So if support is dropping below 65, then one may need to reconsider politics, at least start thinking about that. There is still a huge gap between upper 80s and 90 and that number. And of course, support from the West and the allies does help. It will continue, it will increase, it is increasing, it is continuing. Another important thing is that we are not alone. We're not standing here alone, and the world is with us. And the world is with us. That's clear as a day. I would fight more on the economic front and give more freedom to our people on the economic side of things. But that's our usual problem that perhaps deserves 3 different streams. God knows, Alexei, we might even go there and explore that. Oh, by the way, did you see Prigozhin with his other video when he was recording on the rooftop and his guards, his bodyguards were telling, please step away from the edge. Something may hit and explode and you're risking your life there. So it's his way of toying with it. So he was complaining that his direct link to Moscow, his special encoded lines of communication was disconnected. Did we discuss that with you? No. Yeah, I'm sorry, because I had too many streams in the last few days. Same, Mark. I was also drawing a blank on the missiles attack, because I did talk about that, but I did talk about that with Yulia Latinin and not with you. All right, so he did record a new video. He says that his special communication line was disconnected. And I've seen some of these older type phones. They're codified and special connections for Russian leadership. And there's a special ministry that is in charge of that. I think Marky had a satellite with some elements of it, but there was still encoded line. So not so important, but the basic thing is he is not welcome on the other side of that line. They don't want to hear him. It's a sad news for him. You know, corridors usually end up with a firing squad, and the tunnel sometimes leads you to light. He had picked the corridor. From the nomenclature point of view, what is it when they took your pass away? That's status, right? Yeah, that's definite status, that's access. So disconnected, when your phone gets disconnected, that's a last warning before a bullet in the head. Under Stalin, that's exactly how it was. Yep, that's administrative logic. So it may be figurative, maybe he will be left alive, but maybe not. Given Russian experience of how they deal with unruly field commanders, it may be very actual. So this person is probably singing one of his last songs, very noisily. I have another question. Where is Kadyrov now? Kadyrov, according to his recent post, is giving his son, is on his son's wedding, is participating in that. I heard he is in Dubai, right, and his health is waning. There are no exact confirmations of that. There are rumors that he's treating his kidneys issues, but yeah. All right, let's explore the eventuality where Kadyrov disappears. What happens to that party that was accusing the head of General Command, Lapin, and that ultra-patriotic Russian segment, which wanted to fight to the victorious end? Where are your people? Where are your leaders who were cursing Russian military command? It's only Prigozhin left, indeed, there's nobody else. Well, even Prigozhin is not really in the picture. Even if they're not poisoned and alive, they are not in the media sphere. They disappeared from the decision-making. By the way, a side note, Igor Ivanovich Girkin, the other patriotic leader, so to say, feels himself just fine. He barricaded himself and separated himself, media-wise, from this group. And from political technology point, he actually works fine with his core group. He's sending right messages, imperial element to that, idiotic Putin, poor military decisions, and people who were screaming at him saying that even if you try to come to the front, we'll get you to Wagner and you'll be dying on the front line as other people. And these guys, these voices are no more. Yeah, their connections to Moscow are being removed. And Girkin, who is Girkin? He is representative of FSB, right? He's colonel, FSB colonel, indeed. All right. So who is behind that special head of Russian Hydra that was scary to Putin? You know, Kadyrov, Prigozhin, and that group. Even Zolotov is off the radar for now, who was part of that. So one can probably congratulate FSB and Igor Girkin directly and probably send condolences to that third head of a hydra, which was worrisome for a while. So I have a question. Are they preparing their people to peace this way? That they cut off their own super active militaristic head? Not that we will come to a table and agree with them, but they're literally shutting down the ultra-patriotic side of their supporters. The ones that wanted to continue fighting by any means necessary. The ones who will be screaming that you lost, you sold, you agreed to. So I'm just putting that as a working hypothesis, that may be a sign of preparations. Okay, there was another interesting commentary from Medvedchuk, who said that in April, he was actually held in last year, in 22, in a bag on a concrete floor. I remember our stream when we discussed the capture of Medvedchuk and his bodyguards. Why did you hold him on the concrete floor, Alexei? Well, we were looking for a parquet floor, something wooden and more comfy, but we couldn't, so that's where he ended up. So you think he spilled everything? He talked about everything he knew? Because he's leaking it little by little in the media. He was saying that Poroshenko was offering to take Donetsk and Donbass. So he's leaking some internal points of view of Ukrainian politicians. I don't know, Mark. I don't know exactly what did he sing about, but according to the laws of the genre, he probably spilled his knowledge on everything or almost everything. And when will it come public? We don't know, right? So that can be surfacing at the right moment as the video recording. Sure. I think it totally can. Because it does look like he is talking about some things that he told. They actually tortured me a little. I was in a bag on a concrete floor. Being a billionaire, laying on the floor. Right, very uncomfortable, agree. Okay, we've been live for 38.5 minutes. We're edging to the end of the stream. President Zelensky gave a green light to a petition that we posted that must be close to you about renaming Russia into Moscovia. We already had one character reacting to that, you know, that little one? Right. He called Ukraine in return Bandera Reich or Lord Reich, something like that. But that's his fantasies. He cannot be original in this. That's usual cuss word from him. And I think it's a very delicate trolling from Ukraine. Putin was saying there'll be Muscovites and Uralites left. So can you comment on that? Well, you know my attitude to the biggest theft in history, when Moscow took the name of Rus and just translated that into Greek spelling, Russia, and pretended that they are Russia. And that was the head of the Ukrainian clergy at that time, Prokopovich, and I actually got a present for my birthday with a knife with a engravement, what Prokopovich lost, Arestovich will return. So, you know, it, as Confucius said, it starts with names. So I'm for it. Yeah, I generally support. So Russia will become Moscovia on your maps, right? And what will be Ukraine? I think right now we'll stay Ukraine, and maybe a bit later we can add Rus to that. So they may be Rus, Ukraine, or Ukraine, Rus. See, like in the canonical church documents, it says Rus, Ukraina. Moreover, we have a federal holiday connected to that.